1.6, solving linear equations, or, wow, linear inequalities, I should say. So in the notes, you should have seen that when we graph, we use brackets and parentheses rather than the circles, the closed and open circles. I don't necessarily mark them wrong if you use the circles. However, you should get in the habit of the brackets and parentheses because anytime after this class, you have to use that. And it makes your life easier going forward if you go ahead and get used to it now, because there are things that we'll read off the graph eventually that you'll need to know that. So, anyways. So we start out with graphing the inequality. You only need to graph them if they tell you that they need to be graphed. Otherwise, don't worry about it. So, number 4, x is less than -1. So, I usually put on just like a couple numbers on my graph. I don't like put a ton on there. It's really blurry. So if x is less than, am I using bracket or parentheses?
Parentheses.
Parentheses, and it's opening which direction?
Towards
Like left or right? If x is less than, it's got to be where?
Okay, no, it's
Parentheses is going.
Yep. Going that way. And that's all you have to do. Six, x is greater than or equal to 3. Is this one going to be parentheses or brackets?
Bracket.
All right, and it's going which direction?
To
Right. And I don't mind if you want to use another color to like draw on top of it when you're doing your problem so you can actually see it and not have to do this to try to figure out where you colored it in. That's fine. All right, compound inequalities. These ones, go ahead and give it to you. So they are going to use circles just because that's what this book uses. So when you go to do these problems, you don't have to copy it out of, like, you don't have to copy the graph over unless you just, like, really want to. But they give you a graph from -2 to 4. And it was given to you as, I'm going to convert them into brackets and parentheses, but they gave it to you as circles. So that's what was given to you in the problem. And it says to write the compound inequality that is represented by the graph. So when it's going opposite directions like this one, what kind of a graph is it? What compound graph is it? They have 2 options. And an or.
Oh,
Or.
It's an or graph. So we have that x is less than or equal to 0, or x is greater than 2. Hmm, 14, they give it to us as well as a graph from, they count increments of of 3. So -6, -3, 0, 3, 6, 9. And they would have the equivalent of a parentheses at -3 and a bracket at +9. And it's colored in the middle. So which type of compound graph is this one? And so this one gets written all as one thing. So this would be, reading it off, -3 is less than x is less than or equal to 9. So with an and graph, you basically write the two ends and then whatever the symbol is with an x in the middle. Any questions about those ones? Okay, so far. So then, oh no, I'm losing my shoe. Come back. All right. They say now to graph the compound inequality, so they give you the statement and you have to do the graph of it. So let's see. 18. 5 is less than or equal to x is less than 10. So what is this graph going to look like? Describe to me where I need to put things.
A bracket between 1 and 6 to the right. And then a bracket to the left on the 10, or parentheses on the 10th line.
Yep. All right, and then 20, x is less than or equal to -1, or x is greater than 1. So what is this one going to be?
You gotta fit a bracket on -1
Going which way?
to the left,
Okay. What else?
and parentheses on 1 to the right.
Yep. All right, so since we're doing these like graphing problems where they like specifically tell you have to graph them, the problems where you're solving says to solve and then graph, I'm just going to have you solve those ones. Okay, but what's going to happen is on like the quiz or the test or whatever, you would solve and graph usually. I don't usually just say like, hey, here's a problem, graph it. Usually you actually have to solve it first. So it's up to you. If you want to still graph it, you can, but I won't require you to graph the solve and graph ones because these are pretty easy. And I feel like if you can do 2, you can do all 20 of them. So, so 26, 11 plus 8x is greater than or equal to 7. How do I solve this?
-11.
So 8x is greater than or equal to -4.
Divided by 8.
X
Equals 1/2.
greater than or equal to -1/2. And if you were to graph that, it would be a bracket going toward the right at -1/2. 32, 18 plus 2x is less than or equal to 9x plus 4.
-2. Well, -4.
Okay, so it's going to be 14 less than or equal to 7x. So x is,
2.
yep. And I would typically flip it. You don't have to, but I prefer for it to, you know, look like that. Like the variables on the left. And then the last ones are solving compound inequalities. So the other thing to remember is that if you multiply or divide by a negative, what happens?
You flip this on.
Flip it. So just, that didn't happen in any of the ones we did, but if it were to happen, you gotta flip it. Not too far. 38. 2 is less than or equal to x minus 3 is less than or equal to 6. How do I solve this?
Um,
Add 3 to both.
Yep.
yeah.
Yep, we gotta add it all the way across. A lot of times people forget that, but it's kind of like what you do to one side, you gotta do to all of them. So add 3, so that gives you 5 is less than or equal to x less than or equal to 9. And so if you were to graph it, obviously between the 5 and the 9, brackets on both. And the last one, since y'all seem like you got it, 2 plus 3x is less than negative 13, or 4 plus 2x is greater than 7. So I just solved these ones individually. So 3x is less than negative 15, so x is less than negative 5, or 2x is greater than 3, x is greater than 3 halves, and that's it. Any questions? Cool. All right, your problems then are 11, 13, 17, 19. So you need to graph 17 and 19. If you want to graph the rest, you can, but you don't have to. It's 23, 29, 39, and 45. So remember, technically on a quiz or a test, you're going to be solving and then graphing. So if you would rather go through and go ahead and graph them while you're doing it, that's fine. Or if you're like, I got this down, I don't need to, then that's also fine.